Welcome to True Crime Cases. In a quiet suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, at 10331 OK Road, lived the Johnson circle of relatives. The house, constructed in the 80s, failed to stand out amongst others at the road. A typical one-story shape with a small, properly maintained garden, Buddies knew the Johnsons as a hard-working circle of relatives of immigrants from Nigeria who had moved to the United States searching for a better lifestyles. The family consisted of 45-year-old Michael Johnson, his 42-year-old wife Grace, and their 17-year-old followed daughter Aisha. Michael labored as an engineer at a neighborhood production organization. Grace became a nurse at the Metropolis Health Center, and Aisha changed into a senior in excessive college. At the start glance, the Johnson regarded like a version-owned family. They often attended the neighborhood Baptist church, participated in community lifestyles, and maintained pleasant relationships with their associates. Michael often helped with minor repairs inside the neighborhood. Grace prepared charity dinners, and Aisha became an honor pupil and captain of the school's track and field team. However, behind the closed doors of the residence on OK Road, a totally different story changed into unfolding a tale that could result in a tragedy that stunned not best the quiet suburb, but the entire kingdom of Georgia. Michael and Grace Johnson met in Lagos, Nigeria's largest metropolis, inside the early 2000s. Both came from middle-class backgrounds and had higher education. Michael labored as an engineer for an oil company at the same time as Grace changed into a nurse in a non-public sanatorium. They married in 2005. And straight away began planning for the future. Regardless of their pretty stable role in Nigeria, the couple dreamed of existence within the America. They saw the U.S. as a land of wonderful possibilities in which they may recognize their capability and offer a better future for his or her youngsters. In 2007, Michael received a green card within the diversity visa lottery, and the circle of relatives commenced preparing for the flow. The immigration matter took nearly 2 years. During this time, the Johnsons sold their assets, underwent vital scientific exams, and collected all required files in early 2009. They ultimately arrived in Atlanta, in which Grace's cousin lived, promising to assist with their preliminary agreement. The primary months in the United States proved tough. Michael and Beauty had to recertify their expert qualifications. They labored low-paying jobs, saved each dollar, and diligently studied English steadily. Their scenario progressed through 2012. Michael had secured a position as an engineer at a creation organization, and Beauty obtained her nursing license and started out working at the city sanatorium. The only thing that clouded the Johnsons' lifestyles changed into the absence of children. In spite of everyday attempts, Grace could not get pregnant. Medical examinations revealed that she had serious fertility issues. This have become a supply of steady stress and tension in the family. In 2015, the Johnson determined to adopt an infant. They approached an adoption corporation, and after a prolonged process of exams and interviews had been authorized as adoptive dad and mom, that identical year, 12 months, vintage Aisha, a female of Nigerian descent who had been left without parental care, joined their own family before everything. It seemed that with Aisha's arrival, the Johnson circle of relatives had finally determined completeness and concord. But this very event laid the basis for the destiny tragedy that would spread, and 9 years later of their domestic on All Right Road. Through 2020, the lifestyles of the Johnson own family appeared to have settled into a relaxed, recurring. Michael had acquired a promotion at paintings and became a senior project engineer. Grace had earned a recognition as a skilled nurse within the in-depth care unit. Aisha, now a 13-year antique teen, changed into doing well in college and actively participated in faculty events. However, cracks started to appear at the back of the facade of nicely being Michael, and Beauty argued more frequently over small matters. Their intimate existence had nearly come to a halt. Grace became upset that her husband was spending extra time at work and paying less interest to the own family. Michael in turn felt that his spouse became too centered on raising Aisha, and did not appreciate his efforts to provide for the own family. At some point of this era, Lissa Thompson entered Michael's life. She became a 28-year-old secretary recently employed in his department. Lissa changed into an attractive lady of combined African-American and European descent. She fast took word of the strong and a success Michael. At first, their verbal exchange was constrained to work-associated topics. Lissa often stayed late supporting Michael with documentation. Progressively, their conversations have become greater personal. Michael observed in Lissa an attentive listener to whom he may want to bitch about his family problems. Lissa, for her component, failed to cover her admiration for Michael in November 2020 after a corporate celebration. The first intimate touch passed off between Michael and Lissa. Both were under the have an impact on of alcohol the next day. Michael felt a sturdy experience of guilt, however could not find the strength to quit the dating from this second. Their mystery affair started out. Michael and Elle met in the course of lunch breaks, invented pretexts for joint business journeys, and exchanged messages in a cozy messenger app. Michael told Lissa that he become unhappy in his marriage and become thinking about divorce, but feared dropping his daughter to conceal his affair. Michael commenced spending even greater time at paintings, explaining it as an essential mission. He began to be crucial of Grace finding faults in her appearance and conduct his courting with Aisha. Additionally, have become greater nerve-wracking. Michael could get indignant at any signs of disobedience from her Grace, sensed that something become occurring together with her husband, however attributed it to strain at work. She tried to improve their relationship, counseled seeing a own family psychologist, but Michael rejected all her initiatives. Aisha in turn observed the developing anxiety among her dad and mom, and have become an increasing number of withdrawn. Via the summer season of 2012, the situation had reached a boiling factor. Michael turned into increasingly more, considering leaving his circle of relatives and starting a new existence with Lissa. However, he changed into held back by using the worry of dropping the admire of peers and friends as nicely. Because the monetary results of a divorce at the equal time, he turned into afraid that his affair with Lissa may be uncovered at any moment. It changed into throughout this period that Aisha started to suspect that something became wrong together with her adoptive father one day. By chance choosing up Michael's phone, she noticed an intimate message from Lissa. This discovery taken aback the girl and provided her with a tough moral predicament. The fall of 2021 introduced an surroundings of hysteria and unspoken anxiety to the Johnson family. Aisha, now a 14-year-old lady, located herself at the epicenter of a circle of relatives' disaster, bearing the heavy secret of her adoptive father's infidelity, after by accident discovering Michael's correspondence with Lissa. Aisha have become deeply introspective. She loved Grace, who had always dealt with her like her very own daughter, and didn't need to reason her ache. On the same time, the female felt liable for maintaining the family's integrity. Aisha's behavior especially modified. She became quiet, avoided verbal exchange with Michael, and regularly locked herself in her room at school. Her grades commenced to slip, causing problem amongst her instructors. Her elegance trainer, even known as Grace, to discuss the sudden adjustments within the generally diligent college students' conduct. Grace, involved about her daughter's condition, tried to hook up with her. She prepared purchasing trips together, prepared Aisha's favorite dishes, and provided to speak. But the woman replied monosyllabically and attempted to retreat to her room as fast as viable. Michael, absorbed in his affair with Lissa to start with, didn't pay tons interest to the adjustments in his adopted daughter's conduct, attributing everything to teenage angst. However, he began to note that Aisha averted his gaze, tried no longer to be on my own with him, and flinched when he addressed her on the 6th of November. An incident befell that similarly heightened the tension inside the family during a family dinner. Aisha abruptly asked Michael, "Dad, who is Lissa?" Michael grew to become light and dropped his fork, which failed to escape Grace's interest. He quickly composed himself and responded that she changed into a brand new worker inside the workplace. Aisha stared at him intently, but said not anything extra after this incident. Michael had become even greater irritable and suspicious. He began checking Aisha's phone while she left it unattended, fearing that his daughter may inform Grace approximately his affair. And dating between Michael and Aisha have become more and more strained. Grace felt that something serious become going on in the circle of relatives, but could not understand the reason she attempted to speak to her husband. But Michael dismissed her questions, mentioning strain at paintings she also could not control to have an open conversation with Aisha. In December, the situation worsened whilst Michael learned that Lisa became pregnant. She insisted that he go away his family and begin a brand new life together with her, and their future infant Michael determined himself at an impasse. On one hand, he turned into scared of dropping his reputation and financial stability. On the other hand, Lisa threatened to inform Grace the entirety if he did not make a selection. Soon the strain on Michael grew with every passing day. He began to sleep poorly and regularly lashed out at Grace and Aisha over trifles. His behavior had become increasingly unpredictable, which nervous each girl's Aisha, seeing how her circle of relatives became falling apart, commenced to keep in mind telling Grace the fact she even wrote a long letter detailing everything she knew, approximately Michael's affair. But at the last second, could not carry herself to ship it. By using the cease of December 2021, the Johnson house on Allwright Avenue had turned into a powder keg, equipped to explode on the slightest spark. Every member of the family carried a heavy burden of secrets and unstated words. No person ought to have predicted that the denouement might come very soon and result in a tragedy that would forever trade their lives. January 14th, 2022 commenced as an average Friday for the Johnson circle of relatives. Grace left for the morning shift at the clinic, and Aisha headed to high school. Michael became presupposed to visit paintings. However, all at once called his boss and stated he wasn't feeling well and could live home. In fact, Michael was making plans to meet with Lisa to talk about their future. Lisa's being pregnant could no longer be hidden, and he or she become insisting on instant motion. Michael organized to meet her at a small cafe near their domestic. The meeting turned into tense. Lisa demanded that Michael straight away tell his spouse the whole thing and document for divorce. She threatened to visit Grace herself if he failed to do it in the following few days. Michael, overwhelmed with the aid of the state of affairs, promised to remedy everything by way of the quit of the week. Returning home around midday, Michael changed into a nation of excessive emotional distress. He failed to be aware that Aisha had back from school in advance than standard due to a canceled ultimate duration. The girl heard her father enter the residence and decided to, in the end, speak to him about the own family situation. Aisha came downstairs to the living room where she discovered Michael pacing nervously. She started out the conversation. "Dad, we need to talk. I understand approximately you're dating with Lisa." These words caught Michael off protect. He iced up in location, then slowly grew to become to his adopted daughter. "What did you assert?" he asked in a low, threatening voice. Aisha, accumulating all her courage, endured. "I noticed your messages. I understand you are dishonest on Mom. This has to prevent. In case you do not tell her yourself, I'm able to." Michael felt the floor disappearing from underneath his feet. All his carefully constructed plans have been rumbling earlier than his eyes in a state of panic and anger. He grabbed a heavy table lamp and, without wondering about the effects, struck Aisha on the pinnacle. The woman fell to the floor, blood flowing from the wound on her head. Michael, understanding what he had completed, went into shock for several minutes. He stood over his followed daughter's body, unable to move, then succumbing to panic. He began frantically thinking about the way to cover up the strains of his crime. He wrapped up Isa's frame in the dwelling room rug, carried it to the garage, and loaded it into the trunk of his vehicle. Then he very well washed the floor within the dwelling room and disposed of the blood-stained lamp and his garments round 3 o'clock. Inside the afternoon, Michael drove away from the house, heading towards an abandoned quarry outdoor. The town there, he dumped Aisha's body into a deep ravine, overlaying it with branches and leaves, returning home. Michael took a bath and changed, modified his garments. He understood that he had to create an alibi, so he referred to as the police, and said his adopted daughter lacking, claiming she hadn't back from faculty, while Grace, back from work within the night. Michael become already playing the role of a worried father. He informed her approximately the call to the police and that Aisha hadn't come domestic after classes. For this reason started out lengthy hours of anxiety and uncertainty for the Johnson own family. Grace changed into, in a panic, calling all of Aisha's buddies and friends. Michael pretended to be involved even as interior him. The concern of being uncovered became developing. The police commenced investigating Aisha's disappearance. That equal nighttime nobody, but suspected that this situation could quickly change into one of the maximum shocking crimes within the records in their quiet suburb. The first days after Aisha's disappearance were filled with feverish pastime. The police questioned associates, circle of relatives, pals, and the women classmates. Volunteers combed the surrounding vicinity, placing up flyers with Aisha's picture. Local information was packed with headlines about the missing teenage woman Grace turned into. In a state of steady stress, she barely slept, constantly calling the police, trying to get news approximately the progress of the investigation. Michael, on the other hand, regarded surprisingly detached. He participated in the search efforts and gave interviews to the press, but his conduct raised questions with some observers. Detective Sarah Rodriguez RZ, who was leading the case, noticed inconsistencies in Michael's statements. He got stressed about details while describing his movements on the day of Aisha's disappearance. Moreover, an evaluation of his smartphone calls showed that he wasn't at paintings that day. Although he had to start with claimed in any other case on the fourth day of the research, there was a leap forward. A fisherman passing by way of the abandoned quarry observed a suspicious bundle in a ravine and stated it to the police. Investigators arriving on the scene determined Aisha's frame. Forensic experts determined that dying turned into because of a blunt pressure trauma to the head. The time of dying kind of coincided with the time of the girl's alleged disappearance. Microfibers matching the carpet from the Johnsons' dwelling room were found on the frame. Detective Rodriguez determined to conduct a second interrogation of Michael. This time, she directly asked him approximately the inconsistencies in his testimony and why he had lied about his whereabouts at the day of Aisha's disappearance. Michael, cornered, started out to get worried. He stumbled over his words, sweated, and prevented eye touch with the detective. At one factor, he broke down and shouted, "She threatened to damage the whole thing. I failed to mean to do it." This confession turned into enough. Michael became immediately arrested on suspicion of murdering his followed daughter. The news of his arrest bowled over the complete neighborhood. Grace, upon getting to know what had passed off, fainted and become hospitalized at some point of a search of the Johnsons' house. Police observed strains of Aisha's blood on a floorboard inside the dwelling room, which Michael did not completely remove. They also located Aisha's cellular telephone hidden in the garage. The phone incorporated notes from the girl, wherein she wrote approximately her suspicions concerning Michael's affair. Questioning Lisa Thompson showed the life of an affair among her and Michael. She instructed approximately her being pregnant, and the ultimatum she had given Michael on the eve of the tragedy as information of the crime have become known to the public. Outrage grew. Many couldn't consider that a reputable member of the community may want to devote such a brutal crime against his very own adopted daughter. Nearby government organized a press conference wherein they announced formal charges of first diploma murder in opposition to Michael Johnson. The prosecutor stated their aim to are trying to find the most punishment, even as Michael awaited trial within the county jail. Society attempted to come back to phrases with the tragedy that had happened. The school in which Aisha studied prepared a memorial. Provider associates and circle of relatives, pals, raised funds to assist Grace, who discovered herself in a tough emotional and economic state of affairs. The tale of the Johnson-owned family have become a subject of debate in national media. Newshounds and specialists analyzed how an outwardly wealthy family may want to conceal such terrible secrets and techniques. The case of Aisha Johnson have become a catalyst for discussing troubles of domestic violence and protective the rights of followed kids.